You're watching Just Politics, Our Worldview, live on Facebook every Sunday from 5 p.m. till 7. It's the podcast about politics in Barbados, the region, and the wider world. Now, here are your hosts, Ayo and Terry.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 8 of our weekly live show, Just Politics, Our Worldview, where we discuss politics in Barbados, the region, and the rest of the world. As usual, you can find us here live every Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. Remember that if you missed this live show, you wouldn't necessarily get to participate in our question and answer, but you can rewatch here anytime after our you can watch the podcast version on YouTube each week. Again, thank you for joining us and welcome again to our show. I am your host, Ayo Olalara, with my co-host, Dr. Terry Harris.
Thanks, Ayo. So welcome back, everyone, to Season 3, Episode 8 of Just Politics, Our Review. This week, we have former Minister of Tourism, Mr. Richard Seeley. So please stay tuned with us in what's sure to be a very interesting discussion. This week's episode is brought to you by, as it always is, Desert Properties Inc. You can contact them at 624-0593 or by email at desertpropertiesinc@icloud.com for your construction, renovation, and interior design needs. You can also give them a call with your real estate questions, whether long-term or short-term rentals, or to sell or purchase your dream home. It's your one-stop shop for all things properties. Thank you again. And please stay tuned with us for Hot Topics with Ayo. Ayo, over to you.
Thank you, Terry. Hot topics. What's in hot topics? Well, the first thing we're going to talk about, as we've been doing regularly right now, is the COVID numbers. COVID continues to take its toll on all of us. The numbers are less than encouraging that we will turn this situation around anytime soon, unless something drastic happens. The curfew remains in effect, even though, I've said before that I love to say it gone so that we can get some nighttime economic activities happening, and also so that we can start to see a greater increase in visitor arrivals. I believe I've said before that from, what I'm saying is that the younger visitors are canceling their vacations here and they're opting for locations such as Mexico and other places that have nightlife right now, Cancun and so forth. But there's a slight uptick in the older visitors, especially after that protocol was removed where they have to isolate for quarantine for a couple of days. I've had some visitors extending their stay by those couple of days, which is good for me. We get those extra days, those extra nights. But let me just say this: those older people, they really just want to come here and lay in the sun, so they're not really checking for the nightlife. So we understand that, and I'm not saying that this is indicative of the national view. I'm just saying that this is really a view from my own tiny operation, my own perspective. And most of you know that I work in this space with the short-term rentals and so forth. So that's my view. Have you heard anything else on the vaccination numbers, Terry? Has there been an uptick since last week's moral appeals and moral suasion by the Prime Minister and Dr. Ford?
It certainly seems so. It seems as though we've had a slight uptick, which is good. Of course, we're nowhere near where we need to be, and so the government needs to improve the performance with regards to that. Maybe the idea of asking individuals to go to a centralized location to receive the vaccination from a person that they have no idea who they are was not a good idea on the onset, right? Maybe they should have been doing what they've been doing now, which is to get the vaccines in the hand of the general practitioners, people's individual doctors, and maybe, getting the vaccine into the communities is a better strategy than asking the community to get to wherever the vaccine is. So perhaps, this is where we can see an uptick, along with, the very important messaging from the government, from the Prime Minister, from, the individuals charged with governing the country at the point in time with regards to COVID. Yeah. So yeah, there's an uptick, but we still have a long way to go, as you rightly said.
Yeah, definitely do. And hindsight is 2020.
COVID too.
There we go. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Tonga, but Tonga is an island that is located to the northeast of New Zealand, and it was one of the last places on the planet to not record a single COVID-19 case. Well, that has changed after a vaccinated individual arrived on a repatriation flight from New Zealand. About one third of the population is currently vaccinated, but after this news, inhabitants are actually lining up in their thousands to get vaccinated. Did you read the story, Terry?
Yeah, it's quite amazing to have a part of the planet where COVID has not touched.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was as of last week. The Congolese did not have the first COVID case, and they're running to get the vaccine. It seems as though they have better sense than a lot of people in more developed countries. The anti-vaxxer brigade isn't very popular in Congo.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. And I know some people will have something to say about the fact that the person who brought it back to Congo is actually a vaccinated person. But I mean, what do we say about this? Isn't this how vaccines have always worked? Is there some disconnect with the way we understand how vaccines actually work?
I don't know if there's disconnect. I just think it's willful confusion because it has been known for a long time that vaccines don't prevent you from getting anything. They just diminish the potency of any virus that you are faced with. This has been known forever, but for some reason we want to forget it at this point. Well, some want to forget it at this point in time. Vaccines don't prevent you from getting any illness. No vaccine ever did. All they do is they diminish the symptoms and make it less likely that you will suffer severe illness as a result of whatever disease it is.
Yeah,
That's
I keep telling people, that when this whole when we had this rise in anti-vaxxers under the Trump administration, what we saw happening was that pockets of people started to catch measles again and mumps again, and those things that we haven't dealt with in a long time. These diseases don't go anywhere, just that vaccines keep them at bay. So I think it's important that people really understand how vaccines work. I don't know if we've done enough of that education, and if we perhaps we need to do more of that, or if people are just refusing to accept that as is, and demanding a vaccine that works 100% as a cure and not a vaccine, but
a cure-all. Right?
Yeah,
I know, right? You're right. We did see an uptick in this as a result of after the Trump presidency. However, unfortunately, this whole anti-vaxxer idea has been with us for a long time. Some of the founding fathers of America, were anti-vaxxers. So there you go.
Yep. Anyway, so moving away from COVID news, though, what's happening in North Korea? It seems like they have a food crisis, and their leader Kim Jong-un has asked the people
the dear leader,
he's asking people to eat less until 2025.
Stop eating.
I want to laugh because this is a serious issue right now. Food prices are really soaring there right now due to a lack of supply, and because they're unable to meet the demand. The leader has blamed the series of deviations, as he refers to them, and said that the people's food situation is now getting tense as the agricultural sector failed to fulfill its grain population plan. But the food shortage in North Korea has been exacerbated also by sanctions and COVID-19 and also the typhoons that the state suffered last year. I mean, Terry, this is a situation that we really have to watch, because I don't think that Barbados is really, we can also be affected by food shortages.
It's an important lesson. You're right. It's an important lesson to learn. But as you were speaking, I was wondering if Kim Jong-un is planning to go on a diet. You have pictures of him looking not to shame, but he certainly could deserve. He certainly needs to go on a little diet. So maybe he should.
Well, he started to lose weight, and people were actually wondering if he was sick, if he was ill. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, but to back to your question, though, to me concerning the importance of this topic for Barbados and relevance of this topic for Barbados, we just had an experience where, with all the money in the world, You know, we were unable to buy necessary vaccines at an early stage of the onset of this virus because the entire world wanted the vaccines, and those countries with greater geopolitical heft than us, they weren't selling. So with all the money in the world, we weren't able to buy because of the situation that we were in. Just imagine a scenario whereby instead of being able to buy vaccines, we're unable to buy food. And you can easily imagine a scenario like this. Suppose we have a case where we have a war breaking out in the country, breaking out around the world, a massive war, not one of these little wars that America gets into, but a massive war breaking out, God forbid. With all the money in the world, we're not going to be able to buy food. So we need to really think carefully, and our leaders need to think carefully about what is the plan in a circumstance like that. Do we then rely more closely on our brothers and sisters in the region? What is it? Do we rely more so on ourselves? Where is the food basket of the Caribbean? Where is that country? Do we have such a country? You know? Where's the food basket in Barbados? Yeah, that's what they say, Guyana. Where's the food basket in Barbados? You know, are we going to do anything with the Scotland? Are we going to do anything with the Scotland? That's the food basket, or the sugar cane basket? Are we going to do anything with the Scotland district? Right? No, these are serious questions. I mean, we're laughing, but these are serious questions that we need to answer ourselves today at this point in time, where we see we had a lot of money to spend. The government was, you know, we had private companies getting frauded and all kinds of things happening. Not to bring back at that topic, right? But we had all kinds of things happening, money galore to spend, and we were unable to get vaccines. We could easily imagine it happening with food.
Yep. And we know, I mean, North Korea is we like to say it's a special case, but these things can very well affect us all. It is expected that food shortages will continue into 2025. Like I think I said before, and the possibility of really reopening customs with China, between China and North Korea, remains pretty slim. But we'll keep an eye on that situation as it develops. And I see Sasha here saying, it's good to see you out and about and free, Ayo. I am actually not free. I'm banned from Facebook. Terry is the one who has taken us live. So I'm in Facebook jail.
You're always being banned from Facebook.
The thing is that I did absolutely nothing. I simply shared.
Of course, you did nothing. They never ban you for any reason whatsoever. It's always nothing that you've done that caused you to be banned.
I simply shared an article,
COVID.
But you see, the
Facebook
thing is that
jail.
when we have a platform that is run by algorithms, basically they don't take context into account. So
you know, you've touched on. I mean, I'm laughing at you, right? Because you're always getting banned, but is a quite serious topic. In fact, imagine a circumstance where they were to take down, say, our channel, because of something that is said. You know, that may be factual, may not be factual. We may have made a mistake. They take down the channel. Imagine they're taking down channels of bigger communication portals than us. You know, on both for the Caribbean and more widely. Is it the case that we want to have these companies such as Facebook, and we're using Facebook now, and obviously we use YouTube as well, do we want to have these companies with this type of authority, or should there be a regulator that determines what can and cannot be published on their media? You know, it's a serious question, but of course I know they've banned you for very good reasons. You're always in Facebook jail for all types of reasons.
You know how this banning started? I used the nickname of a guy that he goes by, and they thought that I was calling him a derogatory term. That's his nickname. And that's where I started getting him banned. So then I was flagged then, and suddenly I'm a terrorist, a Facebook terrorist. Makes absolutely no sense to me. Absolutely.
Terrorism Facebook. Or as Sasha said, meta.
Meta. Anyway, here's what it is. Whiskey. Great news for my British friends. I don't know if Anya and what's her name, Batomi's here is yet, but great news for all of you who partake in whiskey. The whiskey tariffs caused by the actions of former U.S. President Donald Trump have been lifted. The U.S. Commerce Secretary has reported that the U.S. and the U.K. have negotiated an end to most of the controversial Trump-era tariffs on European steel and aluminum. As a result, the retaliatory tariffs that were implemented first by the EU and as a counter move by the US will go away with them. And it is said that when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. Well, build no more, my friends. You can now quench your thirst, and you can do it cheaper. Terry, has
Excellent
whiskey been
news.
really more expensive for you guys, or did you notice the difference in the cost?
No, I really didn't notice the difference in the cost, but
Mhm.
that's because I don't drink that much
Oh,
whiskey.
right, sure.
Of course not. Yeah, no, it was a bit of a squeeze. Particularly, my favorite whiskey obviously is Jack Daniels. So,
Hmm.
well, it's Jack Daniels, which is out of America. So it was a bit of a squeeze, but whiskey is not that important on the menu. So I could go without it for a week or two.
Fair enough. Anyway, there's a voice note right now going around with the Prime Minister Mia Motley clearly upset about the COVID situation, primarily the actions of some individuals regarding the vaccination and other treatment medications. I can't pronounce the words, so I'm not going to say it. But we have that note, so listen a bit to it for those of you who haven't heard it as yet.
Lies! We don't want to believe that these doctors are part of some great conspiracy theory. Absolute rubbish. And if we don't start to talk with people straight and direct, we're going to lose more people out of foolishness. Stories of people telling people up there, don't give my mother this, don't give my father this. What nonsense is this? I'm not telling you that people don't have a right from a conscientious perspective, but half the time it is people who are not even know how to pronounce the name of the medication.
Art Dan. Speaking facts.
I don't
This is the
know,
facts.
but
Straight talk.
I have no argument with people
Remdesivir.
questioning the government's handling of the vaccination process. I've said from the beginning that vaccination should be mandatory. There's no two ways about it. I know a lot of you here on the program right now, you don't agree with me, and I understand the political elements. I understand the political implications because Trumpian logic has so infiltrated our people right now that a lot of them are against the vaccine. But I also know that it would have made a difference in where we are right now, health-wise and also economically. However, on the criticism of the Prime Minister's tone of voice note, on the voice note, I'm really disappointed that we're still tone policing women and expecting that women should not be verbally passionate or passionate at all, really, or publicly passionate. We've had some rough talking and some downright derogatory things said by male politicians over the years. And we are so forgiving of them in a way that is not really extended to women. And somebody said to me, women have also criticized the tone of this note, of this voice note. But we all know that many times, unwittingly or not, women continue to prop up the patriarchy. So I think it's important to critique policy where necessary, because you don't have to agree with policy. That is what it is. But please, we're well past the place where women should be quietly and gracefully seen and heard. You know what I mean? I always think back to the outcry that was caused by Lace Thompson getting on the back of a garbage truck. I was pretty young back then, but I found it to be ridiculous then, and I still find it to be ridiculous now. And I am also quite positive that if a man, right, had taken that same action that Lace did, he would have been regarded as a man of the people. He would have been regarded as down to earth, all types of other positive attributes. That's your business. But please, people, mostly you boomers especially, because we're past this. Gen Xers and millennials, we care nothing about respectability politics for the most part, especially when the intent is really to just keep women in some place that really never existed except in the minds of men. I think, Terry, you listen to that voice, no? And you're a man, and I'm gonna allow you to speak on this.
Thank you so much. This is what I have to say.
Of our lives. We don't want to believe that these doctors are part of some great conspiracy theory. Absolute rubbish. And if we don't start to talk with people straight and direct, we're going to lose more people out of foolishness. Stories of people telling people up there, don't give my mother this, don't give my father this. What nonsense is this? I'm not telling you that people don't have a right from a conscientious perspective, but half the time it is people who are not even know how to pronounce the name of the medication.
So that's what you have to say about it.
That's all I have to say.
Well, I take that. Moving on. And happy Halloween to all our US friends and those who celebrate Halloween in Barbados and the rest of the world. It seems that the biggest costume this year is AOC's Met Gala dress. She posted on Twitter and approved of this this little furry fella or girl. I think it's quite cute. And she wore this dress to the Met Gala that said "Tax the rich." I agree with it, by the way. And everybody is like, it's the most worn dress right now for Halloween.
I guess it was really probably is the most worn among the rich. This is a very scary outfit that this half Korean leftist, as the right wing would like to say, is wearing. So yeah, so maybe this is extremely scary, and that's why they're dressed up as AOC.
Yeah. Oh well. On that note, here ends this week's Hot Topics. As we move to the next segment, viewers, note that you can also ask questions or contribute to the program with your comments. Simply type them into the comment section below, WhatsApp us on 833-9886, or email us at jprworldview@gmail.com. And as usual, remember that you can also join the conversation right here online on video with us. Just send us an email at jprworldview@gmail.com. I'll be checking my email as we go along, and you will receive a link where you can also come in. And you also remember to click like, share, and also turn on your notifications.
All right, so this week we have former Minister of Tourism, Mr. Richard Seeley. Mr. Seeley, welcome to the show.
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. Good evening to both of you, and of course, good evening to your guest.
You're the guest, so good evening to you.
Sorry,
you mean the guest online? Yes, of course.
I'm the studio guest. Well, let me use a different term. Your family, your face, your social media.
I got
family.
you.
Good evening,
I got you. Just pulling your legs and late in the moment. Anyway,
that's okay.
So elections are in the air, and Just Politics will be interviewing many of this season's candidates, we hope, and bringing you all the action definitely each week. We are so excited about what this season will bring. We love elections. I don't know if anybody likes elections as much as I do, but I love elections, and I simply can't wait. So welcome again to the show, Terry. We haven't seen you in a hot minute, so before we move in, just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to since the last elections.
Well, I've been trying to stay out of Facebook jail. What's that all about?
I hope you've been more successful than I have been.
I am. I'm not sure. I'm not sure in accepting your invitation what I've ensnared myself in, but anyway. Nevertheless. Yeah, no, I continue my life practicing as an engineer, civil engineer, specialist in geotechnical specialist in civil engineering, and that's what I've been doing during these very perilous times. That's
definitely
what I've really been doing.
Okay. How involved have you been in politics, or not really? No, just getting back in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I haven't taken a sabbatical. I haven't gone overseas on any labor program. I've been right here in Barbados. I was active in the St. George North by-election. I'm still active in the party. I've addressed a few branch meetings and the like. You know, you don't get phone calls from the media as often as you used to when you actually are a government official, when you're a former government official. So clearly you would not have seen me in the media like before. But I've still been here, still very keen in public goings-ons, and still, concerned like everyone else about what's going on in Barbados. I'm still a committed member of the Democratic Labour Party as well. That ain't gonna change. So.
Okay, excellent, Terry.
So, Mr. Seeley, what are some of your thoughts, given your concern? What are some of your thoughts on what's been happening with regards to, I guess, COVID, management of the government's management of the COVID situation in Barbados. What are some of your thoughts with regards to the economic fallout? What are some of your thoughts there?
Well, I listened to the discussion you were having during your initial session, and you know, it is, of course, the numbers are ridiculously high, and we are seeing deaths. Well, we've gone over 150 now, I think. So naturally, the situation is concerning. It calls for action. Now, it is interesting that the government, when faced with numbers not nearly as high as this, and with less virulent strains, they call for a lockdown on public health grounds. Now we have numbers that are way higher than during that lockdown period. We are hearing the exact opposite. And I understand it's a very, very difficult position that the government is in. If ever you wanted a textbook definition of being between a rock and a hard place, you have it right now. Clearly, the economic pressures, the economic realities are in direct conflict with the public health considerations. We can't lock down forever. Right. Yes, we have vaccines now, but we got rates that are through the ceiling. I have no problem with pushing the vaccination business, and I think that Terry was talking about it. The true thing about the vaccine is it isn't eliminating the existence of anything. It is good for governments, especially where socialized healthcare is concerned, because it should send down the cost of healthcare if symptoms are a lot less. And individuals and families as well. And of course, the survival rate would increase. But it isn't going to stop the virus from being transmitted. Every single thing you have to do before you're vaccinated, you still have to do after you're vaccinated. And that tells me that what I would like to see the government do, and I think this is something that Mr. Ellis, David Ellis, could spearhead, is to try to preach the whole concept of personal responsibility a lot stronger, encouraging people to mask up, to wash their hands, the social distancing, etc. Even some fairly irresponsible gatherings that we still see in front of some of our watering holes on a Friday evening and so on. You drive past some of them, if anyone is wearing a mask, it's around their neck, and everyone is behaving like if, COVID-19 doesn't exist. And the way to do it, and it is actually the identical approach that needs to be taken to get your vaccination rate up. You have to look for the nodes of influence in the community that people listen to and get them to try to convince people to take this thing a little more serious. I don't know that the shouting and the barking and the carrying on, as they say in Beijing parlance, like if you make yourself, I'm talking about from the very highest office in the land down, that's not going to get us anywhere. Every single community in Barbados, there are 2 or 3 people who are seen as being the nodes of influence. If you interview everybody in the community in Barbados, ask them who are the 2 or 3 most influential people in this community, you're gonna get the same answer. It's gonna be the guy that keeps the shop, the retired school teacher, the basketball coach, the football manager, a retired police officer, that everybody, there are going to be 2 or 3 people. Get them on board and get them to work in trying to encourage more personal responsibility, because it is clear the answer is not vaccination to get past the pandemic. The pandemic is going to be with us. As you can see what's going on in other countries, they've already accepted the endemicity of the virus. They've gone past pandemic. It's endemic now. It's like the flu. It's there. We got to live with it. And I'm saying that we are going to have to try to encourage people to get the vaccination program, fine. But parallel to that, there are some other elements I think that we need to do if we're going forward, because we got to live with this thing, and it is clear where the government is going. They're throwing their hands up in the air. I mean, visitors can come in now without a test, and we ain't, the lockdown is out of the question. I don't understand that curfew foolishness, because on one hand you're saying you're bitterly opposed to a lockdown, but then you're pushing the curfew that doesn't make any sense. You know, I don't understand that foolishness. I've never met a half pregnant woman in my life. You know, either you are or you aren't. A curfew is a form of lockdown, okay? And that doesn't make any sense. You mentioned the night economy. You're absolutely correct. People that work in restaurants, people that work in the distribution sector that provide goods and services to these restaurants, the transport sector, all suffering because of a nonsensical curfew. So that is clearly not impacting from a public health perspective. So you know, again, we just need some clarity and to accept reality, personal responsibility, and we need to press on. That's my view on it.
Do you
Sorry
think
for taking
that
so long.
that's fine? Do you
That's
think
okay.
that if the safe zones were introduced, that would help people or encourage people to get vaccinated, and would also increase the testing, and therefore we could open back, we can get rid of the curfew faster basically and get the economy moving again? Do you think that that's a good idea, these safe zones? Because you have to get tested if you want to go into a party, affair, or so forth, or you have to come vaccinated. Therefore, I think people more than likely, if they want, you know, those who want to will or would. What are your thoughts
Uh,
on these safe zones? That is.
I need to hear that fleshed out more. I'm trying to understand this safe zone concept in the island is 15 by 21. I mean, it seems a little. You're talking about events, and only vaccinated people can attend certain events. Is that what we're speaking of? I mean,
If you're vaccinated, or
you
you
know,
can get a rapid test on at the same time.
a rapid test. Well, sure. I mean, but that is not. That's not. I mean, okay, fine. So you're saying if you don't have a vaccine, you just get rapid tested. Potato, potato. I don't know to what extent that's really addressing the problem in any fundamental way. It's perhaps a nice little strong arm tactic to try to get more people vaccinated, and it could probably work. Even though, again, I prefer honey to vinegar myself. I think that you should try to encourage people. I do not accept
So
that
you
the majority of
wouldn't
Barbadians
mandate
are
either.
anti-vaccines. No, we don't have.
So you
What's
wouldn't
that?
mandate vaccinations either.
I don't think we have to. No. I think the majority of Barbadians will accept the need to get the anti-vaxxers are actually a minority. You're going to have a lot of people who perhaps are skeptical, and the way to do it to influence them is through encouragement.
Okay.
Right. So what's the Democratic Party doing to because I think you guys have been kind of silent, just to be kind of straightforward about it. What are you doing to encourage and to build, you know, that receptivity towards the vaccine? What are you doing?
Well, to my knowledge, all of the constituencies have standard bearers, and they certainly are on the ground encouraging responsible practices and encouraging vaccinations. I mean, Democrat Labour Party doesn't control any media outlets or have any means of doing, you know, PSAs, public service announcements. That's the government's job. We will do our part in our circle to encourage, as I believe most responsible organizations are doing. I think we've heard the leadership of the party speaking to this, and we should continue to do it. I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back a little bit, because we talk about COVID all the time, and you know, COVID. So I just want to
It's so
take you
pervasive.
back a little. I just want to take you back a little bit, because I don't want to look back all the time, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on the last elections, and you know, where the Democratic Labour Party lost 30 seats. We haven't spoken to you, I haven't heard you speaking publicly, so just talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that election? What do you think?
Democratic Labour Party lost the election by a significant margin. The electorate made their decision, and one has to respect that decision. I think you have to accept that reality. You know, we have seen extreme defeats and in the region and beyond, and you have to accept that. You know, that is that's just the reality of our situation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I mean, you don't question the electorate, and I think that when you start to do that, you're getting into some dangerous territory. I mean, I've been in this game
Mhm.
long enough. I've been on both sides
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
of the the electorate's favor, and in my favor. But should always take the opportunity from those losses and to come back next contest. And
Mhm.
I'm satisfied that definitely much of much of that has been taken on board. And you will have noticed significant changes have occurred in the party. Well, all parties make changes between elections. That's not new.
Mhm.
That's not unique. But we obviously you have to listen and make the necessary adjustments structurally in terms of personnel allocations, in terms of policy pronouncements, the whole full gamut. And I think the party
Yes.
has been indeed embarking in that exercise.
Yeah. And as a result of that, do you think the public's perception of the Democratic Party has changed measurably since that defeat?
I would have to say yes, not because I'm supposed to say yes, but because I mean certainly there enough change has taken place that the the public's position should also change, reflecting that. That doesn't mean that there's not more work to be done. That doesn't mean that we don't have to continue. It's a work in progress. Um, and I do hear some concerns from time to time about issues of the party and its messaging and to what extent is it resonating and reaching people. And these are things that I believe are being taken on board. And from what I'm seeing, the team is working hard to try to make itself uh, more relevant going forward. One of the things that certainly I have been pushing is the whole concept of responsible opposition. I've been around long enough to see what irresponsible opposition politics is all about, and I think you need to be straight with people, and you need to offer alternatives. You take a clinical look at our problems and let people know what the range of options are and to what extent you even may have to sacrifice. I think that an authentic opposition that is along those lines is what I think people will appreciate. People are not interested in any bag of promises now from any opposition. We can do this, we can do that, we can do the next. It's not gonna. I mean, I know others have tried it and it worked successfully, but I don't think that's going to work going forward from here. That's my view.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's
Are
talk
there
about.
any?
Oh, sorry. Go on, Terry.
Thanks. Are there any on the same theme, being an authentic opposition? Are there any topics that would transcend party politics? Are there any topics that, I mean, your view would lead to Democratic Party not playing, I guess, politics with it, but these are important issues for the nation, and so you need to join hands with the government to work with them to get them resolved. Are there any themes like that? Do you think?
There are always themes um, that that we could work together. I mean, I think Barbados has had, for example, a very long and successful track record of the parties joining hands where foreign policy is concerned. We've never really bickered over our foreign policy. I mean, and then there are other things as well too. When our key sectors come under threat, well, apropos to that would be, for example, when the international business sector had to deal with the attacks from the OECD and so on. That was the previous opposition I was a part of. But I would like to think that where we have instances like that, including a pandemic that is not of your own making, that you can join
Right.
hand in hand and work together. That should go almost without saying.
Mm-hmm.
But Terry, it works. It works both ways. And I watched a government take a pandemic. and make it political. We only had 7 deaths. Remember, before vaccines were invented, we were doing a phenomenal job of managing the COVID-19 crisis. And our leader is up there with Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand, one of the best in the world at managing the pandemic. And if Randall Stewart was still Prime Minister, we'd have over 100 people dead from this thing. That type of foolishness. Of course, now we have over 100 people dead. I'm just saying, it works both ways, Terry. I am saying opposition parties, but parties in government must also be responsible. And that is all I'm saying. We have a good, long treasury track record. And all I'm saying is that we need to work together. And the politicization is wrong when opposition parties do it. And it is also wrong when governing parties do it. And I've been on both sides of it, and I'm not trying to think. I'm just saying Terry asked a legitimate question, and I've given him a
of course. But politics aside, I just want to talk about, because I keep hearing people say, when COVID first started, with this and with that. But at that time, we like Jacinta down there in was it New Zealand or Australia?
New Zealand.
We were also everybody was in New Zealand, right? Everybody was on we were following a zero COVID policy, but we can no longer follow a zero COVID policy. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, things have changed. That doesn't negate the point I was making. I'm just saying that let's face it. The thing is out of our control, and we have to be careful. I saw a report in today's paper. My very good friend, the chairman of Barbados Sporting, supporting the decision to allow the visitors to come in without a test, which, frankly speaking, I don't think we have any choice, because the cruise industry would shut down if we didn't do it.
Exactly.
But a statement that justifying it on the basis that Bajans coming home are bringing it back and not the tourists, I think we need to be careful with our language. Peter Old is a very good friend of mine. I might even call him on it, because maybe his words were not reported correctly. I know how that goes sometimes. I know Peter is, good man, gentle soul, a good patriot. Maybe he wasn't recorded correctly, but to the extent that they may even have people thinking that way, that's not the route we want to go. Effective, making Barbados a nice place to live is making Barbados a nice place to visit, and therefore, when you make life better for your citizens, you make life better for your tourists, and that is the foundation of the whole thing. Certainly, when I had my little stint at tourism, that's how I saw it.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're gonna move away from that a bit, because I want to because you were the last minister of tourism, and I mean, most people agree that you did
twice removed.
Pardon?
Well, not immediately. I was succeeded by right. Yeah,
of course.
Mm-hmm.
But what are your thoughts on the current state of the industry now? Because you have that somebody's asking you about UNCTAD and different programs like that. But I want you to talk a little bit more about what are your thoughts on the current state of the industry in this whole COVID environment right now. Are we doing enough? Is there more that can be done? What would you do differently? That's like,
well,
given the challenges that we're currently facing.
That's there are many dimensions to that question. Certainly, there are things that are out of our control. What I would say from where I'm sitting is that one gets the very clear impression that there is no real plan. Now, maybe the new CEO of BTMI, who is coming to office after 2.5 years of it being vacant, Billy left October year before. Maybe he's bringing something, I guess, and we have to wait and see. I personally don't see how someone's Rolodex is going to just make magic happen. Nothing against the gentleman. I know there was some suggestion that I was against him because he wasn't Barbadian. That was the point I was making. I made a very simple point. And I'm getting to your question, as well. That we had an organization that was struggling at the level of staff morale. We did psychometric tests and we restructured and created the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. And under the CEOs that we had at BTMI, we made sure that we were developing management talent, some of which we brought on board, some of which was there, and we promoted and trained, etc. And the whole idea was that we would create a career path so that young people in the organization would see a future, this reputation, bringing an outsider to come and run them from within. And I took it from an HR perspective. I had a difficulty with the whole manner of how things were done, And the truth is, the board met and agreed that one of those same officers that we had invested in, we had transferred her from one market to another. We'd invested in her education. She had been selected, but for whatever reason, the political directorate decided no, and then kept the job vacant with acting and temporary CEOs until this gentleman that flew in the island day before yesterday. Something is wrong with that. And that typifies what is the real issue, in my opinion, where tourism is concerned. Now, you had a scandal the other day. Well, scandal is a very strong term, but you had a little situation with the slogan, and you had a reboot. Yeah, Little Island, big whatever, what was Little Island, big smile, I think it was, and it turned out that they had copied it. The people who they paid $750,000 to didn't think to Google the thing first before they had decided to present.
They said it wasn't $750,000. All right, well, let's go move on. You go on.
700,000, if you want to be technical. I still got my sources there. There is a reason why that reboot committee has not reported, because what they came up with has been put on a shelf. It is embarrassing. Sir Hilary Beckles, he's a brilliant historian. He's a very capable university administrator, brilliant historian, phenomenal thinker, writer, academic. But he is not a sloganeer. He is not a marketeer. He's not a tourism person. And that reboot committee came up with 3 alternatives. It's a Bajan thing. That's 1. 2, live like a Bajan. That's 2. And 3, Barbados, feel free. Well, they could as well keep Little Island, big smile. Is that really what those 18 people came up with? It's an embarrassment. What is going on in tourism in Barbados? I mean, the crap that is coming out of that ministry, I don't understand it. And no wonder they're not hearing anything about it. That's on a shelf somewhere sitting down there, so embarrassed by it. And this can't continue. And I'm saying the pandemic has thrown up real challenges for us. Other people are getting on with their business. You understand that we have one of the best stretches of beach and hotel property in Barbados, breeding rats and roaches just north of Spikestown, because the government decided to go to war with Sandals over some foolishness. Because, of course, because we brought them here, they got to play politics with it. They're building 3 hotels in Jamaica. They're building 1 in St. Vincent. They're upgrading a hotel in Turks and Caicos. Cayman Islands got hotels building, and Barbados, nothing, no foreign direct investment. So the construction jobs and the chance to get 2,000 permanent jobs, you know what that would do for the economy in St. Peter? It's sitting idle. We have to get serious about this thing and stop playing the politics. And it is something, frankly speaking, that the people like myself will get passionate about. I don't understand that foolishness with the CEO and why it took so long and what they came up with. This thing with the slogan is just as embarrassing as the Little Island big smile nonsense. And the policy to try to We moved from 6,000 to 7,000 rooms and we're breaking records for arrivals by 2018. We should be moving now, given COVID, and you're not going to get arrivals. We should be trying to get the room stock out because obviously with the pent-up demand, there's going to be a bonanza eventually. And the question is, how will Barbados benefit from that? Because we need tourism. The reality is what's going on in Barbados is not sustainable. You cannot borrow your way out of a crisis. The same way that, you know, the then leader of the opposition was so articulate, you can't tax your way out of a crisis. Remember, well, now that she's Minister of Finance, you can't borrow your way out of it. You have to earn your way out of it. And you need the capacity, you need a room stock. Of course, you need airlift, you need tourists, but for the time being, you need to put things in place. And that's not happening. You know, I'm sorry, but that's just my take on it. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm glad to see a few inaugurals. That's wonderful. And, you know, but against what backdrop? I mean, I came across some information recently that suggested that a lot of this the airlift we're getting is because there's distressed inventory. In other words, the aircraft sitting them on the ground. I wonder how much Barbados is paying for this airlift. I wouldn't have access to that information. I mean, I probably could get it, but I wouldn't want to put in those officers in that position. I don't believe in doing that. But we have to be careful that we don't let anyone put 10 fingers in our eyes. As happy as I am to see developments out of Europe and so on in terms of airlift, I spoke publicly to that already, actually. I thought that the KLM flight out of Amsterdam, the Schiphol airport, good thing. I don't know how much it's costing, and it will require work beyond the gateway because Holland is a very small country. Schiphol is a hub airport. You're going to have to do some work throughout Holland, Belgium, and that part of Germany that borders Holland and so on in order to make it successful. So I'm not going to say that they haven't done anything, but there's a lack of coherence and maturity, and also the relationship between the government and the private sector. I don't understand why the BHT and the Ministry of Tourism should be so far apart on basic issues like forward bookings and cancellations. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. And, you know, it's not a good place to be. You need to be working together. The Ministry of Tourism is not like other ministries, okay? A Minister of Education knows that he has, 20-odd secondary schools, 70-odd primary schools. The Minister of Health knows he has the 3 hospitals and the 9 polyclinics. The Minister of Tourism is private sector led and driven. And you are largely a facilitator. Yes, the promotion of the destination is government rights to build, promotions and so on, and the marketing of the destination. But you have to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, but it's a silly. You break or it's stuck. If you can hear me,
that has to be dovetailed with the private sector. You can't have the ministry, the BHT on totally different.
You're cutting out and coming in all the time, so I'm not sure what's happening. But I want to ask you this: if you were the Minister of Tourism right now, what would you do differently in this current climate to improve our visitor arrivals?
If you were.
Yeah. You heard me? Did you hear me?
Yeah, I would get on my knees and pray. I heard you. Did you hear me?
I heard you.
Are you hearing me? Yeah, we heard you.
I can hear you now.
You're hearing you.
You're breaking up sometimes, so just be me.
I'm not sure why, if what I'm doing on my end. Is this any better yet?
You're fine. It's just internet. Go ahead.
Oh, the internet. Okay. Well, I'm not totally unfamiliar with this position. I mean, okay, I didn't have a pandemic to deal with, but we had a legitimate global economic crisis in 2008. Actually, the worst the world had seen since 1929. I mean, the pandemic obviously would have trumped that. But the point is, at that time, we had to sit down with our private sector partners, and we had to approach the providers of airlift. We had to beg people to still come to Barbados. I mean, aircraft were We're canceling flights all over the Caribbean, all up to tourism destinations globally. But it was an effort at developing partnerships and working with people. Relationships are important. We
Mhm.
also, I think, and this is where again, when I speak of the morale in the organization that is responsible for marketing Barbados, whether it was the Barbados Tourism Authority as we first started, or Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc. It's extremely important because the people doing the sales calls, the people on the front line, not the minister, not the minister or the permanent secretary, or for that matter, even the CEO or the chairman of the board. It is those officers on the front line, and they need to feel good about what they're doing. They need to be empowered. And right now, the morale in that organization is at an all-time low. One of the priorities has to be making sure we have adequate resources to, in essence, face our partners um, in the market, because that is where the rubber meets the road. That's where it has to happen. I think that again, the policy that we had of diversifying the source markets as much as possible. We were heavily reliant on the UK, and something like the US, which was the second largest source market, was underdeveloped. We were able to bring on JetBlue and so on. I know those types of policy options might be limited during the course of the pandemic, but the principle of trying to um, look beyond your traditional markets, the idea of allowing your staff to feel motivated to go out there and do work during a crisis time, those are some of the things that you need to do. I also believe that you need to have a clear plan of investing in the sector for life after COVID. Well, to the extent that you will no longer have COVID. You're going to have some sort of coronavirus, I guess, still in the system. But the element of investing for the inevitable bonanza that will turns me. Why is it that so many of the tourism projects appear to rigor mortis are set in? We heard all about this confidence, this investor confidence that exists in Barbados. So we ain't seeing it. We're hearing about it. There's 3.5 years now going in 4, and I thought that was one of the criticisms of the last administration, in spite of the fact that we got Sam Lords going and we got the Sandals properties going and so on, and we encourage a lot of other domestic players to do their thing. Accra built 44 rooms on Miami Beach. Seabreeze expanded by 44. Gordon Seal with the old Amaryllis, 153 rooms. I mean, there was work done at the level of domestic investment and foreign direct investment. And I believe that this is the ideal time now during this crisis to focus heavily on that. Some of the destinations in the Caribbean recognize that fact, but for whatever reason, Barbados seems to be struggling.
So
The
what are your
Hyatt, for
thoughts?
example, we were
Sorry,
trying to get
just
the Hyatt going, but the court intervened, and but those players are no part of this government. But it still ain't going nowhere. I don't understand. I thought they had all the answers. But again, a wonderful and an important project, because what that does is, in essence, it should uh, allow us to leverage the Carlisle Bay and the potential for tourism, a whole new axis of tourism beyond the south coast and west coast, and getting Carlisle Bay and Bridgetown going
going
up
up
to the
here.
Needham's Peninsula.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty important part of Barbados. When visitors come here, I visit Barbados quite often, and when I visit with some of my friends, they cannot believe that Bridgetown is the town that we have. We have we have the 2 bridges in Bridgetown, fantastic area, but they can't believe what we're doing with it, right? The area really does need to be developed. I have a question for you though. What were your thoughts? I mean, you're criticizing the government, but what are your thoughts on what they have not done? But what are your thoughts on the digital nomads policy? What are your thoughts on that? Isn't that innovative? Isn't that? I mean, we receive plaudits from around the world with regards to that whole digital nomad um, facility that we've extended to citizens from around the world to come here and, and work from Barbados. What are your thoughts?
there's nothing wrong with it. And, yes, the packaging of it was innovative, but it was happening before, but it was usually a bit of a, what you call it? It was really a bit of a labyrinth having to deal with the immigration department if you wanted to do something like that. But packaging it the way it was packaged and so on, yes. And all of those persons responsible should legitimately feel good about what they've done. Is it an answer for, limited or no arrivals in tourism? Of course not. We still need to get, the mainstream industry going. But there's nothing wrong with encouraging people to work from here going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Ayo, you want to answer any questions from the audience because we've been ignoring them for a little bit?
I'm getting so many like warnings from Facebook. Like I keep having to say disagree, and I'm hoping they don't cut off because they think I'm the one who has gone live. So Angela had asked a question. Put on my glasses. Sorry, earlier, and I didn't really get into it right now. This is Angela Eustace tonight. So she wanted to talk a little bit about your thoughts about UNCTAD. I'll start with that one. And everything that's being done around that, has that, how important is that to our international business sector? Can it help to answer some of our questions? Can it help with those things?
Not really, in my opinion, no. UNCTAD is basically a dead organization. UNCTAD has been superseded by the World Trade Organization, and largely, there isn't really UNCTAD. I mean, don't get me wrong, you get a little conference, you get some bed nights and so on, and you can get a little exposure, fine. But UNCTAD is really not, driving trade policy or trade programs at the global stage now. That agenda is set by the GATS and the World Trade Organization, but it's a UN agency, and I'm not saying we should ignore them. I'm not saying that the opportunity to host the UNCTAD conference we should have taken the opportunity. Wonderful, but don't expect manna to fall from heaven because of that. That's. I mean, I like to keep my 10 toes on the ground, and I think that's the way I see it. If a trade specialist can come and convince me differently, well, so be it.
Okay. She also asked about your thoughts on the National Beautification Program.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the island needs cleaning up in certain areas, and we can accept that. And I'm not going to oppose genuine efforts at cleaning up, our public spaces, etc. But it sometimes looks to me like if the programs are not as effective as we would want them to be, and they just become an excuse to put a few dollars in people's pockets. And if you're going to do that, there may be more effective ways that can contribute to the national development. I mean, for example, the agricultural sector is struggling for affordable inputs. Only recently they got the good news about the water rate. I think that's wonderful. 3 years after the rather unconscionable increases were put on them, I don't see why a farmer should have to pay sewage and garbage and all that stuff added on to a water bill. It's unconscionable, but it was addressed finally 3 years later. But beyond that, another big cost is labor. If there's a way that some of these young people can be even subsidized by the government, as opposed to giving them a broom and a shovel to prop up on the side of the road and look at one another, they could maybe get involved in a much needed, the agricultural sector. I'm just saying, and you need to discuss it, obviously, with farmers' organizations. And it is something that, I have had some offline discussions. We've had some offline discussions with Mr. James Paul from the BAS, but there's some options that maybe we could look at where we could we could better utilize some of the young people that we see on the side of the road cleaning up. And that's not again to say that there's not legitimate beautification exercises that need to be taking place in some of our public spaces. Thank you.
All right. There's a question here I want to ask Batami. Thanks for joining us, Batami. I was wondering where you guys were. Anya, Anta, Angela, and all you guys, all our regulars. But Batami's asking, have you talked about inter-island tourism and promoting that? What about promoting tourism from non-traditional markets? And I've always felt like from time immemorial, we've practically ignored inter-island tourism. We've talked, successive governments have talked about getting a ferry. Everybody's saying they're getting a ferry, but we never see it. And with the taxes and so forth on tickets, how expensive it is to travel from one island to the next and these things. Isn't it time for us to really take a look at inter-island tourism and really manipulate it and make it into what it could be? And not only that, but not only the profit making that is possible, but also the idea that we start to unify the Caribbean a little bit more. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree totally. And it's an important market. It was actually our third largest. I think it still is the third largest source market for visitors. A lot of the visitors, it's event driven. COVID would have changed a lot of that, but a lot of the events are viable because of the visitorship from our neighbors. The issue always has been the cost to get here, and the option of a ferry in itself is a lot easier said than done. Barbados is not next door. Some of these other islands are a lot closer to each other. I'm not saying that we can't look at it, but it certainly is not going to replace aircraft. It will have to be in addition to aircraft.
In addition, yeah.
Because people will still want that option. But the question is making it affordable. When I was in the job, we actually appointed a VP Caribbean Latin America because there was a time when it was seen, down the totem pole. So we actually put the VP with responsibility for Caribbean and Latin America on the same level as Canada, the USA, and the UK. Mr. Corey Garrett was appointed with that job. I think he's still in it, as far as I know. But it's right. She is right. We cannot treat it like the Cinderella market. It is a legitimate market. These people come, they spend same hard currency like those from the North Atlantic countries. And many times they actually spend that money in communities in a manner that the traditional tourists might not. So yes, we need to do that. And as you said, non-traditional, big believer in that. I got a lot of lashes for the idea of the flight out of South America. It started with Brazil and then it went to Colombia. And of course, we eventually did get the Copa flight out of Panama City. But we have to think along those lines and open up our tourism offering to non-traditional places. And the same thing in Europe as well too. So I'm all for that.
So do you think that the new head of tourism, based on his CV, do you think that he might be able to get us some of that non-traditional market coming in?
Maybe, if he can. I don't know. I guess he might have he has his contacts over in that part of the world, and we will see. I'm a patriotic Barbadian, and I'm also a realistic one. I want to see the destination do well.
Okay.
Just because I would not have hired him, that doesn't mean I want to do well.
Of course.
I want to do well.
That's the way we all think. I'm going to shift the question in a little bit and come back to tourism. Terry, you can go ahead with your question.
Oh, well, I just wanted to ask another question from Angela concerning, before we get to talk about maybe the issues in the constituency, let's ask concerning the Republic. So from Mrs. Seeley, we have, Barbados is going to become a Republic this month. And what is your take on this whole Republic debate?
I'm on the side of individuals who believe that I think we went about it wrong. You take the public with you. What is the hurry? No one is telling you you can't have your moment. No one is telling you can't have credit for being the first prime minister in the new republic or whatever. But why the haste? Take time and bring folk with you. It just feels wrong. I wasn't around in 1966. I wasn't born yet. But I happened to live in Antigua from 77 to 79. I was there when they went independent, 1978. I think it was 78 or 79. But it was a period of, there's a euphoria, an eruption of patriotism, a feeling of having made this giant leap. We're not feeling it. It seems as though to me that you have a whole set of partisans who are convinced this is the best thing that has ever happened, and then you have a huge set of Barbadians who are fairly indifferent at some levels, or who are just not feeling good about it. And it could have been handled a lot differently. And that's my position on it. I don't have a problem with getting there, as natural as night follows day. Now the argument is, well, when will be the right time? Well, I don't know. In the middle of a pandemic, when you don't know whether you're going or coming, the economy is in shambles. Perhaps take some time and bring the people with you. That's all I would have. That's what I thought would have been the better thing. And the other sinister element. Why does it have to be the 30th of November of all the days in the year? 365 days, and the only day you can find to go republic is the very day that the Democratic Labour Party government took Barbados independent. This obsession that this party seems to have with trying to erase the Democratic Labour Party. Let's knock down the Hilton. Let's knock down the National Insurance Building. Why that day? You mean you could have any other day as Republic Day, but you choose the 30th day of November, Independence Day? I mean, that suggests to me you're being a little sinister. But beyond that, I think even getting beyond the Dems like me who will feel that way, Barbadians are not feeling as if they're on board. I heard the academic, one said that there's no soul to this republic. One said that there's no spirit. It's just basically somebody dragging us into this thing for whatever reason, and admitting that basically it is still a lot of work to be done, that in my opinion, you have the cart before the horse. It could have been done so much differently, and you could have still got all the credit you want. This is the thing that mystifies me. Nobody's saying you can't have the credit. You got time to work with, as far as I know. And get it done. What's the hurry? What's the rush? What is happening? But that's just my take on it. And I know your Labour Party people will have something else to say.
Who's Labour Party people? You mean me?
No, not you, not the two of you all, of course. No. I was speaking. I said, in other words, I mean the general.
They say guilty conscience. A guilty conscience means no accusation.
No, not the two of y'all. Y'all are way too professional for that kind of partisanship. I don't.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So what are your views on the whole call for? Because some are calling, for a referendum, saying that we should have had that. I take the point that I'm not sure I agree with it. I take the point that you're making, that it seems as though there's a rush, but the counter argument to that would be we're going to be simply making a side step towards becoming a parliamentary republic it's just an advance in our independence project. It's not really this massive change as some people are calling it. So maybe a lot of the work can happen after. So there's that counter argument. And then the whole idea that there should be this euphoria in the public concerning becoming a republic. Well, we're already an independent nation. The independence moment is past. And despite your ideas about sinister motives by the Barbados Party, they cannot change the history. And Barbados is independent because of the work of very excellent Walton Barrow, Democrat Labour Party stalwart. So I don't think that history is not going anywhere. I don't think it needs to be so sensitive. But so there's the argument that independence moment is past, and the people are not going to be as enthusiastic about this moment, even though it's necessary to advance our independence, simply because we're already independent. And as you rightly said, we have a lot of other things on the frying pan right now: COVID, the economy. So there's an explanation for that. So again, back to the question. So what about these alternative perspectives, and what about the call for a referendum?
Well, you have beautifully, supported my position. I agree with everything you just said, Terry. You said it perfectly.
Really?
And in fact, you put it beautifully. The history is there. We are already a sovereign nation. What is all the hullabaloo about? You said it. Anyway, look, I
don't think that's exactly what I know that's not what I said. But
Richard knows this. Richard knows what you were talking about. He knows what you're talking about.
He said, no, but he's right. He's right. There's no need for the hullabaloo. We are 56 years a sovereign nation. The question of advancing the project and having a parliamentary republic, we can have a discussion on it. And there are so many different definitions of what a republic is. I would bet you the last dollar in my pocket, if you were to select any 10 members of that current cabinet, put them in 10 separate rooms, ask each one of them what the definition of a republic is, you'll probably get 10 different answers. I mean, because there are just so many republics out there. And you're right, Terry. I'm not being invidious here. When I say we are sovereign, absolutely nothing is going to change in terms of how we manage our affairs. And therefore, take some time and get it right. Now, where you and me may disagree, Terry, because I didn't think you took a position on it.
I think we were disagreeing even before then. But.
Not necessarily. You're right. We just approach it from different. We just approach it from different. The same.
Okay.
We just approach it from different angles. But I do not believe in referendum as a tool for
right.
public policy. I
agree on that.
I don't. I think it's messy. Just ask the British about that. After that confusion, there's no led to Brexit. I think I like the idea of putting your agenda together and going to the electorate, and the electorate has to sit down and make a serious decision on what they're doing and the implications of what they're doing. And yes, as I said earlier, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I don't believe in it. It's messy. And I think that there are other ways that we could perhaps go about it. And if it is that it's something that we feel strongly about, then you can put it at the center of your manifesto for the next general election. And there's nothing wrong with political parties both agreeing on something, as we discussed earlier. It might be a difference in approach, as was the case with independence. There's this view that the Barbados Labour Party opposed independence. They didn't oppose independence. They opposed how we did it. Barrow said, let's go alone, and they said they wanted to go as part of a regional project or whatever. But I'm saying we can get into those mechanics during the course of a general election campaign. I find referendum quite messy, and it is not something that we are accustomed to either in this part of the world. I mean, I know that some of our neighbors have tried it, but that's just my position on it. Yes, exactly. But
we've never had a referendum in Barbados.
No, not here. But
no.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just looking at the audience questions now before I move on to the next questions, because sometimes we get so caught up with talking, we forget the people who make us, and that's the audience, right? I have a question for him. I want to ask, how does he feel about the investment bonds from the CDB dealing with German capitalists? This is coming from Adrian Bascom.
How do I feel about what?
How do you feel about the investment bonds from the CDB dealing with German capitalists?
I'm not so sure I understand that question. If you want to ask me about the series J bonds that were recently introduced in Parliament, I can talk about that.
You can talk about that.
You want me to talk here about that? Because I'm very concerned about that, because we haven't had a budget since 2019. And the junior minister of finance gets up and says he's doing a new series of bonds to pay back a previous series of bonds. So we're rolling over debt. And oh, by the way, we're paying people in bonds, including people whose land has been taken up. And if you refuse to take bonds in lieu of payment, payable when able, because the government ain't got the money. The fiscal situation is bad. And of course, the governor of the central bank tells you that the 15.9% unemployment is not even realistic, that is actually much higher. I'm a little more concerned about those bonds and the overall debt situation in Barbados. And we need to have a budget, a proper financial statement of exactly where we are. I'm afraid the utterances that I'm hearing between the governor of the central bank and Mr. Ryan Strawn, it looks to me like we are rapidly approaching what I think the former chairman of the Federal Reserve Board talked about a fiscal cliff. We may fall off. I don't like the bits that we are getting. We understand government revenue is down, and of the pressures of the social services, etc. We heard from Cynthia Ford that the welfare demands have tripled since COVID. So we under some pressure. And we want to hear the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to veer off, but you mentioned bonds and you triggered me. Sorry about that.
I realized I was ready to pull back the question.
That may have been the intent. That may have been the intent.
I don't know. Well, so no, okay. No wonder you got to put you in Facebook jail. You smart, huh?
Anyway. Flaming Arrow is asking. She's saying, welcome back, Flaming Arrow. I know who you are. She's saying, speaking of trade, what is the former minister's thoughts on the increased engagements with the African continent, taking into account our below replacement level repopulation dynamics and possibilities of migration from the continent to the island? It's a huge question.
It is. I think I'm all for the South-South connection and making sure that we can trade more with our partners there, and the efforts I think should be supported. And I don't speak out of both sides of my mouth. I said earlier that where foreign policy is concerned, the government, we generally speaking, there's been unanimity across the parties, and I don't see any reason to oppose a genuine effort at trying to increase relations with our neighbors to the south, near and far, those in Latin America and those in Africa as well. I think it's important and it should be encouraged. The bit about population dynamics and so on, I don't know anything about that. I'm not aware of that, and I wouldn't want to comment on it. Generally speaking, the policy of managed migration has worked for Barbados. I know the work permit regime has not always been smooth, and it has its, controversial at times. But clearly, we have a limit to the resources in terms of physical space alone, and our capacity as well. So we can look at these questions and operate to suit.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's asking, where are we with the Hyatt and what spill-offs can you see? This is Angela asking, not somebody, Angela, sorry. What spill-offs can you see in an economic sense for the surrounding areas, such as the Bayland area and so forth?
Well, I already spoke to this.
Yeah.
I think it could be huge. I often compare what could happen in the Bayland and Carrington Village and all those other areas around that General Carlisle Bay area. If you think about what Sam Lord's Castle did for the St. Philip area, um, I spoke earlier about from far back as Haywoods and even other hotels, what I would have done for the North Island and even the West Coast that would have been transformed, albeit 50 years ago. It is a huge opportunity for people who perhaps had to travel far to be part of the tourism industry, to have it in their community. I think the economic boost that it could give to those inner city communities is a positive. And I said that, yes, at the time I was also a parliamentary representative for one of those such communities. But the point is, I think that having a new axis of tourism development would be a good thing for Barbados in terms of also options. Your capital city, accommodation within walking distance of your central business district, and so on. I mean, so much positives that can come out of this. I'm a believer in it, and I think it can be master planned in such a way that we don't compromise the fact that it is a very popular beach for locals, including locals from those very same communities. I don't accept that you can't have the two coexisting. And in fact, it works well in the West Coast. Yes, you get your little flare-ups in between, but generally speaking, I think, the beach as a public space usually works well for us, and we go from there. I see no reason why the youngsters from the Bayland should be seen any differently to the youngsters from Fitz Village or from St. Lawrence Gap or the Crane in St. Philip. And all of a sudden, tourism can't come in this area, but it can go in those areas. I don't accept it. So that's how I see it. And I really, really, really want to see that project off the ground. I think it would be a catalyst for other development as well in the Carlisle Bay. And once it's master planned properly, now we've made some mistakes on the West Coast, let's face it. You can't even see the West Coast when you're driving up Highway 1 now. It's all blocked out. But we can master plan it, have public spaces and access and parks and so on. And we can still have some tourism development as well.
It brings me to a question that I often ask, and I talk about this a bit. I've spoken about it on this show already. The whole idea of community type approach to tourism. And because you were Minister of Tourism before, I'm going to ask you this, even though you aren't the current one. What is stopping us from going after that type of, or moving towards that type of approach to tourism, where it is more community based? I mean, right now, most of our tourists, they come in, or most of our visitors, they come in and they stay in all inclusive hotels. And I understand the importance of having that market, but have we traditionally done enough to promote more community based type tourism projects?
Well, it is a struggle sometimes. I mean, I was part of a government that tried to push it, but the truth is that there are some traditional players in the sector who are not as keen on it as you are, and I. It is a reality that some of the players don't think that our visitors are interested in that type of thing. I mean, it is very backward thinking, in my view, but it exists. And, it is so funny when you, for example, consider, and some of the players don't like to hear this, but it is the truth. The number one tourist attraction in Barbados, according to the exit surveys, this is not my opinion, this is what the tourists are saying, is the oyster and fish fry.
Without a doubt.
And you wouldn't want a better example of a community tourism project. And it started organically.
Mm-hmm.
There were some issues with Baxter's Road, I think, and one or two little incidents. And women used to fry fish on the side of the road there, just in oysters, and then it just developed. And then, of course, there were some champions, the St. John's, both late Sir Harold and Lady Stella and others pushed it. And yes, it has developed into this massive community tourism, culinary tourism experience. And now some of the same traditional players are proud to say how close or how far their hotel is away from oysters.
From the same oysters.
You know, it is funny how things work. But the oysters experiences tells us that there's scope. I mean, we tried with the Spikestown Alive series when I was there. I still think that, you know, the businesses up there are sitting on a gold mine. I mean, Spikestown is tremendous. I mean, it's probably even more quaint than oysters and has a lot of potential in terms of having that kind of experience. And even beyond the culinary element, I mean, the pottery in St. Andrew and so on, there are things that you can entice our visitors to come into the guts of our communities and enjoy. And it needs to be deliberate. I understand the government had a little problem with the product authority that we established, but whether or not you agree with the structure, the principle of focusing on our product, it's as important as our marketing. You can't escape from that. And setting up committees that aren't really producing anything isn't going to improve the product. You got to have actual officers working and getting into the communities, and let's develop some of these experiences. I imagine post-COVID, you're going to have some other concerns, but that is what government is there for. That's what a progressive government is there for, to facilitate. I mentioned earlier, the Ministry of Tourism is not like Transport and Works or Education or Health or any of those ministries. You are largely a facilitator. And if you can facilitate the big investors and the medium-sized investors, you got to facilitate the community practitioners as well. And I would sincerely hope that again, that's taken on board, and we shouldn't have any partisan squabble on something as basic as that.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts on what's happening now with the cave, Harrison's Cave?
Harrison's Cave?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Chaka is a highly regarded company out of Jamaica in terms of managing cruise attractions in the region. Belize, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, well, and now Barbados. They employ an awful lot of people. And many of these people, of course, were laid off until recent times. The cruise season, of course, is now getting going in the region. I haven't heard exactly what their plans are, because certainly nothing has happened to the cave as yet. I would sincerely hope that at some stage we can all be brought into the loop in terms of what they're planning. I didn't like how the whole process was gone about. Nothing against Chaka. When we were in government, we were talking to some local players. They, of course, opposed that and came into government and then handed everything over to these Jamaicans. I hope it works out well, but we need to still make sure that everything is in place for a smooth transition. The other thing about Chaka, of course, is that there were rumors that they were talking to people about being taken over by a Mexican outfit. Now, so is this a lease about? Oh, there. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Is this lease that they're getting for Harrison's Cave about improving their balance sheet so they'll be more attractive for an IPO or a takeover or whatever? You know, these are the things that need to be properly trashed out. But the mere fact that nothing is happening makes you wonder. And again, if it is that there's a reticence because of the pandemic, I would think that the government should intervene and find out what those stumbling blocks are, because this is the time to invest and get your product ready, if that is indeed the case.
Anything from you, Terry, or can I go ahead?
Well, you can go ahead if you want to ask more questions from the audience. Go over ahead. If not, I have a couple questions. Go ahead.
Okay, well, not from the audience. What I want to ask is this question. You know, the Democrat, because I want to bring us back to some raw politics now. The Democratic Labour Party, admittedly, they have just like the Barbados Labour Party, they have a rich history in Barbados. Were you the leader of the Democratic Labour Party right now? What would you be doing to take the party forward from where it is right now?
Nothing different than what I'm doing. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I am at the disposal of the party. I mean, I'm not sure that I absolutely get what it is you're driving at. I mean, I'm not suggesting that your question is invidious or anything, but I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from.
Well, there's this view, and I sometimes hold the same view, that the Democratic Labour Party really doesn't seem as though it is as cohesive a unit as it needs to be going into the next election, right? It doesn't appear as though they're started or they're moving in the direction that one would expect. We're still seeing new candidates coming on board, although we can still be saying about the Barbados Labour Party at this point, they're changing out people. But the Democratic Labour Party is really coming from behind. So, I mean, what would you be doing now? Do you think that you would, you tell me, I don't want to put the words in your mouth. What would you be doing?
No, I think it's important. And I see an effort at doing exactly what I feel needs to happen. And that is you've got to start to craft a vision for the future, and you got to share it. And that vision needs to be grounded in reality. It is no point putting, wild promises that we have traditionally seen opposition parties do. We don't need that. And maybe even the DLP might have been guilty of a little of that in the past too. And I'm not making a partisan point there. I'm just saying that these times, more so than ever, you have an electorate that has way more information at its disposal now, given the information communication technology, and the two of you will know about that only too well. And then, of course, you have the reality of the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, the IMF program and people being brought down to reality. Barbados has fundamental problems, and if you're serious about this business of government, you have to level with people. I mean, I was part of a government that had to deal with fundamental problems, and the truth is we had solutions, we implemented solutions, but of course, for various reasons, we're no longer in government, and this government has now found the same issues in a fundamental way that we were dealing with, and they too are struggling. It is a genuine struggle right now. The truth is, we have a small island. We have nothing in Barbados that the world wants, okay, in terms of mineral resources. But everything that the world has, we want here. So how you're going to bridge that? I mean, services led by tourism services, I understand, because we ain't got no oil or no gold or diamonds to sell to anybody. So the reality is that we have to be prepared to make some sacrifices going forward. And these are some of the fundamental questions, How do we attract foreign investment? How do we encourage domestic investment to keep the economy going? And then, of course, one could argue with the social infrastructure that we have built. To what extent can we afford it? And if we can't, how do we craft it so that we can still have a quality of life for all Barbadians? And And these fundamental questions are the ones that, in my view, a political party must be prepared to approach if they're serious about taking this country forward. And I think again the Democratic Labour Party is doing some of that, and they need to continue doing it. And I'm encouraging them to do it. And certainly I'm willing to be a part of that exercise at any level. And it's not for me to tell the Barbados Labour Party how to do their business, but I think that they too need to take a look in the mirror. A lot of effort on PR, pageantry, looking good, spin, hyperbole. But what about what happened at the fundamental level? The Temptations had a song called "Beauty Is Only Skin Deep." That's the story of this government. Fantastic PR. But what is the plan going forward for Barbados? We're going to borrow our way. We're going to beg philanthropy. I mean, we can't tax anymore, I assume. I don't know what's left to tax now. But these are the sort of questions that we need to ask. And I hope that they too will see the wisdom of putting together a proper program, not PR. And how you imagine a government got 15 PR consultants? Barbados has more. This prime minister has more PR consultants than parishes in Barbados. Something is wrong. I'm not saying don't have one or two, because communications is very important. You need to have good PR. I understand that. But 15 deep? I mean, Roy Morris and his team, David Ellis and his team, Pat Paris and her team. Who else I forget? I can't even keep track now.
That's true.
Government. No. And teams. Each of those are the team leaders, No. So each of them got 4 or 5 people behind them. So I'm saying we have to get past the surface, and I hope that honestly, the next general election, and maybe COVID will shake us to the core such that the political parties can be debating fundamentals couched in reality, because people are not interested in any wild promises anymore. I can tell you, you're going to be a very irrelevant, lonely politician if you're just going to come with those promises and so on that we have traditionally heard in elections in the past. So, yeah, that's my own take on it. But I might be wrong.
No one has ever accused you of being generous, that's for sure.
What?
No. I mean, Mr. Silly. Let me just ask a quick question here. I mean, it's good. It's your take. So, what about your constituency, though? Have you remained in touch these past years? Have you remained in touch? You said that you're back in practice. You're an engineer by profession, and you're essentially back there. But what about the constituency? Have you remained on the ground?
Basically, they won't leave me alone, and I don't mind. I love them.
You forgive them?
No.
Oh.
Forgive them? No.
Yeah.
It's not a.
You have not forgiven them.
No, you haven't forgiven them.
It's not. No, people. As I say, you respect. You participate in the process, and you respect the decision. It's our system. It's a democratic right that an individual has, and they can put an X next to your name, or they can put an X next to somebody else's name, and you have to respect that. And I don't think that I have any challenge with that in that regard. It probably helped because in my first outing in 1999, it didn't go in my favor. So it wasn't a road that I didn't travel. And I guess experiencing that as I did at 29 years old or 30, I think 29 going 30. I think having had that at that stage, you lose by 1,123 votes. I think it was you tend to appreciate the reality that people have a right to make their decision. You're going to be a part of this process. You have to accept that. It worked out for me 3 times afterward, but sometimes it doesn't always go in your favor. And don't question why they do it, because they don't need to give a reason. it's up to them. It's a personal decision.
It's a democratic right.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you a question here. I hope doesn't make you uncomfortable because it shouldn't. But I want you to tell us a bit of your views on women in politics and leadership. How do you feel about women in politics and leadership? And is this a priority for the Democratic Party? I know you have a woman leading the party.
Absolutely.
Generally.
And there are a number of women who are very active in the party at all levels. I personally, I'm all for having as many women as we can have, but I will also add, and there's no reason why this should be a difficult point to accept. My own experience has been the worst thing you can do is let a woman know that you are doing something for her because she's a woman. And
absolutely,
that is why I don't support quotas and so on and nothing like that. I think that we have enough capable and competent women out there that both of the political parties, and for that matter, all the institutions in Barbados, can find good quality women in leadership. No, I think we have good women, and I don't believe in doing something for her. That's the worst thing you can do for a woman who is competent and capable, is let her know that the only reason you are getting this position is because you are a woman. That's a no-no, and I don't think it is necessary either. We have good women around who are more than capable of doing what the men are doing and have been doing. Some may even argue they probably will even do it better, but I'm not getting into that. I wouldn't get into that part, but I do believe, yes, I'm also more women in politics, and to some extent, if you listen to the theme that I've been preaching from the start about politics at a different standard, that should probably attract more women as well. Because if we get away from the whole personality-driven type thing and the usual, some of the behavior that we associate with the campaigns, the juvenile attacks and so on, you would probably find that a lot of our intelligent young women would be more inclined to get involved in the process as well, because it is a fact that we heard that some women I've heard who have spoken to have said, look, they don't want to get involved in this kind of thing, and I think that we can see much more of our women involved as well if we also raise the standard of the behavior. And I think that is something that I really like to see. And if anything good can come out of COVID as far as our politics is concerned, I think a good dose of reality. And I could be wrong, but when I speak to the people now, after 2018 and the IMF program and now COVID, I don't think that they're going to be game to be hearing any of that usual foolishness that we hear coming from platforms. So that's how I see it. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah, kind of. Although I think that quotas are necessary in an environment that hasn't advanced enough not to require quotas, but that's a personal view.
But it's refreshing to hear the point about raising the standard. That is important to especially coming out of what happened in the last election. So that's exactly what we'd like to see going forward. And I think you're right. It would attract more women into politics if a lot of this, let me just be honest and say nastiness, is gotten rid of from the political landscape. Let's hope that is the case. All right, so Mrs. Seeley, I was going to tell us a little bit about your accomplishments while you were minister. Can you itemize what are your biggest accomplishments as Minister of Tourism for Barbados?
Well, I mean, that's not a fair question. I don't you think that others should have that opportunity to speak to that? I mean, I think that.
Well, I'm giving you the opportunity to your own horn, right? Just itemize. You don't have.
Don't worry. When others come, we ask them the same questions. So you go right ahead.
Yeah, well, but maybe because what they say, empty vessels keep the most noise, right? I
Yeah.
sorry, no, but seriously speaking, I think that I yes, there were 3 years of record arrivals, and the fourth year, the first year after I left was also a record arrival. So you had 4 years of back to back, back to back to back to back. But beyond that, I know that's at the surface level. I think what you have to do is dive a little deeper. We started in
Mhm.
2008 in the middle of a legitimate crisis. We had to deal with that crisis situation and restructure our institutions such that by the end of the tenure we were there. But more importantly, we moved the hotel room stock from 6,000 to 7,000 rooms with deliberate strategies, government involvement, government facilitation, yes, the so-called controversial concessions regime, etc. But we were able to move that. I think the product authority was a legitimate accomplishment in terms of being able to get people aware and talking about product. I mean, that conversation we just had about community tourism really touched me because that was what we were trying to achieve. This idea of tourism being just about bums and beds. And so it's restricted really to the hoteliers. And if they decide to go and get something to eat at a restaurant, that's it. And then, of course, the attractions started in there as sort of secondary. No, but moving beyond to players who, could legitimately participate. And I think that was certainly important. The niches, the culinary end of things, the Barbados Food and Rum Festival, of course, gone into abeyance again because of COVID. That has the potential to be huge, not only from a touristic perspective, but, it could be a legitimate national festival for Barbadians to enjoy and celebrate our culinary delights and of course our national beverage as well too. Rum. Rum was invented in Barbados. So so we,
Okay.
we, we attempted to deal with the niches. I mentioned earlier about the diversification of source markets. Looking at tourism beyond UK, US, Canada, and the Caribbean, getting into Latin America, getting back into Europe. Um, I thought getting the Canadian market going again, it had been a little down for a while. So there were a number of accomplishments. The way that we handled the economic crisis with the $25 million tourism industry relief fund, as opposed to just having a hotel relief fund that's happened post 9/11, which was $10 million. Looking at again other players, I think the biggest thing was trying to get people to understand, including people in the sector, that the tourism sector was more than just accommodation. Um, and one of the things that I think we were able to do, and to some extent, maybe it's been reversed slightly, but get people to understand the other aspects of tourism and that they're legitimate players. You know, we had someone who came from a background of um, the beach, not vending, the water sports operators as deputy chairman at the Barbados Tourism Authority, Mr. Husbands. We try to let people realize that other people mattered in the sector other than just the traditional view of the hoteliers and so on. So I think that the statistical accomplishments are there, and the work that we did in trying to build an overall thing, and it really came to a peak in my view when there were numerous awards, but the North Star Award in 2017, that where the destination satisfaction index of Barbados was recognized as the highest in the world. That was a real plus for us because that is they actually polled the visitors themselves, and our work for the 10 years prior to that, that came to a crescendo there, and that was the one award. There were several awards. I can't even list them all, but the
Mhm.
truth is that we were going in the right direction, and I hope that we will get back there because we need tourism. Don't let anybody fool you. I understand, and I'm all for diversification, but you're not going to get anything that will allow you to import food and import food and fuel for our vehicles at the levels that you would expect without tourism. I mean, the foreign exchange, you need $800 million in fuel, $700 million in food. The other stuff will eventually get there, maybe, but tourism is still what you need in the immediate future.
Mm-hmm. All right. I take that point. I want to ask you a couple of questions on number one, legalization of marijuana. First, your thoughts on that?
I'm not a fan of marijuana. I don't like the stuff at all. But I find it a little puzzling how a plant can be illegal. I mean, how do you work that? I mean, who made the plant? I mean, if you can take a potato and make a bomb out of a potato. I mean, now the bomb is illegal, but the potato is legal. I mean, the marijuana plant, I personally am not a fan of it, but I think it is a little difficult to have a plant being illegal. The government is playing games with this marijuana issue. 1 foot in and 1 foot out. It's illegal to use it for recreational purposes, but it's okay for medicinal purposes. And if you happen to be a member of the Rastafari community and you're in front of a tabernacle, you can use it there. But if you use it in front of your house, you could be charged. I think we need to decide one way or the other what our position is on it. And if you decriminalize it, decriminalize it. But this mixed thing is confusing. It is clear the direction that the world is going in, and maybe we should just go there because, as I said, it's a plant. God made it. I don't see how it could be illegal. A plant, and if it is that abusing it is going to cause problems, but then you deal with it at another level, not necessarily the legal system. And I say that as someone that actually, to be quite blunt, I can't even stand the smell of it or the look of it, nothing. I'm not a marijuana fan by any stretch of the imagination, but at the same time, I keep my 10 toes on the ground and I'm a little realistic. And our position right now on marijuana is unrealistic, in my view, and confusing. I also had a very interesting discussion. Oh, but you go ahead, because I was going to talk about the marijuana industry, but that's not what I was asking.
No, you go ahead. No, you go on. I was simply going to make the point that just following on from your point about it being a plant, it's more than a plant. You're saying no, it's medicine, so it's hard. I'm hard pressed to find any rationale as to why you're going to say that I can't grow my own medicine when you admit that it's a medicine. But you continue to talk about the industry. Not me personally. And
yes, no, I understand. I mean, you can't have it both ways. That's the, either it is or it isn't. The licenses and so on to get the industry going are quite prohibitive, and at least one of the major potential investors is already apparently pulled out. And you're not going to pay that kind of money for a license when you can pay a fraction of that and get way more acreage in a larger country. So perhaps the government is pipe dreaming to think that we are going to have marijuana plantations up and down Barbados, and that is the savior of Barbados as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the other question I wanted to answer leading on from that is the question on the importance of youth to politics from your perspective, and also, I guess, how the Democratic Party, including young people in the political process, and is it an important point of discussion?
It's a very important point. It should be encouraged, and I am delighted when I see so many young people coming forward, not only to be on the front line, but also to work in the party as well. It's a good thing, new members and so on, and it is very important. I started out as a member of the Young Democrats in the 90s, and so I'm a huge believer of youth involvement, and in a significant way. I don't mean there should be ornaments on the periphery just to say, oh, we have young people here, but they should be at the table in the councils helping to make decisions. And And yes, they may make mistakes, but you know what? You can come back. I prefer to have a 22-year-old making a mistake than to have a 65-year-old making a mistake. I mean, if 22-year-old making a mistake, he will then learn, and then when he's 26, 27, 30, he will know not to do it. So you have to bear with them and encourage them, and continue to develop our young people.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Terry,
doesn't only go to politics.
Definitely. Terry, anything else from you?
No, that's it for me. Thanks so much. Yeah.
All right. I just want to ask one more question then. That from Sasha. Sasha is asking a very important question, and it's something that the Prime Minister is currently focusing, because they're winding down now, right? The Prime Minister is focusing a lot on climate change, which obviously is an important question, especially to millennials and Gen Xers, the whole idea of climate change and politics and, you know, where that's taking us. So she's asking about climate change and tourism. What are your thoughts on that? Is this something that we should focus on? Is any time the right time? What are your views?
Well, the tourism sector, certainly, as far as I know, they're doing their darnest to try to implement Green Globe standards and the like, and they should be encouraged to do that, because apart from it being morally the right thing to do, it is a fact that there are a lot of visitors who are concerned about their carbon footprint and want to travel to destinations that are practicing those, being responsible in terms of how we mistreated our planet, let's face it. And I think people are starting to realize it, and they want to enjoy a vacation in places where they're satisfied that fact is recognized, and they're prepared to be more responsible. And that's certainly how I see it. And it is my fairly certain knowledge that, again, most of the progressive minds within the sector feel that same way. And I would like to think that this government, certainly based on, again, what we hear from the leader, that they wouldn't have any difficulty embracing that concept at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm just gonna, at this point, do what we always do and ask you, is there anything that you want to leave with us? Take a minute or so and just make any statement you want to on any topic, anything. The floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Wow.
Yes.
No, I just want to, well, first of all, thank you both and encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. It's important that we have some meaningful discussions on these things. I know that life has become very fast paced at the moment, and everyone is so intense. And we tend to want to reduce everything to a tweet. But the truth is, sometimes you need to just take some time, unpack issues, and try to understand them. And I'm really glad that I had this opportunity to chat with you, for us to discuss issues. And I think that, I still remain, first and foremost, a very patriotic Barbadian. I am concerned about Barbados, and you could probably detect that. In my view, I think that we can do better. We have to do better. And if we don't, we're going to find ourselves in some trouble. And I hope again that we can continue to do what we have to do to make Barbados a better place to live. And once we do that, it will automatically become a good place to visit and a good place to invest. But it starts first and foremost with the quality of life, which unfortunately right now is under threat. But we can improve it if we are prepared to, in a mature, coherent manner, address the fundamental issues and get past some of the hankering, the partisanship, the squabbling, and the PR machinations and so forth. And let's get down to what is nitty, get down to what is gritty, and fix this wonderful island of ours. So once again, thank you both, and I wish you all a pleasant evening.
And thank you also. And don't just hang up. I just want to thank the audience and back to me and Anya and Angela and you guys and Cassandra and Flaming Arrow, all you guys, I just want to thank you. I see your comments. Love your comments. I can't respond to anything. I can't laugh at any of these jokes that are in there because I'm in Facebook jail, unfortunately, for the next 7 days. I should be back next Sunday in one piece. And I didn't do anything. I'm going to keep
Hopefully. Yeah, of course not. You did nothing wrong.
My innocence.
No,
I'm appealing right now to my lawyer, actually.
Everybody in Dodds, like everybody else in Dodds, you didn't do anything wrong.
What it is say in Shawshank Redemption, we're all innocent here, aren't we? Anyway, as we come to a close, I send thanks to all of you for joining us and for sharing your knowledge. Richard, thank you so much. I actually enjoyed this conversation with you really a lot, and I hope that we have another one. Thank you also to those of you who joined us and shared your comments and questions and ideas. And as usual, remember to wash your hands, sanitize, wear your mask. We're still in a pandemic. Practice physical distancing. And if you haven't as yet, regardless of what anyone is telling you, listen to me, get vaccinated. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share the page, invite your friends to join us right here next Sunday at 5 p.m. And as usual, live long and prosper. Over and out.
Yeah, I just like to thank the Mr. Silly for being here. Some would say he's uncompromising. And some would even use the word invidious, right, to describe what he's saying. But thanks for sharing your critical political perspective. We really enjoyed it, and we hope that you're not a stranger to this show. Right, so over and out.
No problem. Thank you. I really enjoyed it actually. And anytime at all, online or offline, just shout me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll help you. We'll help you back.
And keep doing your great work. It's great work you're doing. Keep it up.
We'll keep trying.
And just try to stay out of the Facebook jail as well too. If you can.
I don't think she can help it. All right, so see you guys. Right. Thanks to the audience as well for joining us.
Take care.
We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for watching Just Politics, Our Worldview. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at JP, Our Worldview. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash the notification bell so you'll know when we upload new content. Join us next time.